Editing can feel really overwhelming, so let me walk you through my entire Lightroom workflow from raw file all the way to finished photo ready to print. Look, I used to be just like you. I used to randomly move sliders around trying to guess what was gonna work, but now I follow a reliable step-by-step process that not only makes me better photos, but also saves me tons of time and effort. It's a process that I teach in Landscape Photography University. We have a whole course on sale right now for Lightroom and Photoshop for landscape photography that you can check in the video description below. Now, the first step of the whole process is importing and organizing your photos so that you can easily find them and edit the right photos. Now, that's really important. You want to edit the right image instead of editing thousands of images that you don't really care about. So here you see I just got back from a trip to Iceland, and you can see I took hundreds of photos from this single location trying to get the exact right photo. If you look at a lot of these, I'm taking photos from far away, but I noticed that I wasn't getting the right atmosphere that I wanted. I wanted that strong leading line that took you directly to where these two sea stacks were out into the ocean. So that's what I mean by adjusting and editing the right photo when you're starting to edit this process. Now, I go through these and try to find the right image. Now, I use a star rating system to find the right photo. So if you come up here to filters off, I'm gonna come down here to rated, and you can see I've rated out this one photo as the one image that I'm going to start editing. Now, the editing process varies from photo to photo. It can take you a long time or a short time. I prefer to spend a short time editing so that I can get back out into the field and take more photos, or to be honest, take a nap that afternoon. So what I'm gonna do is first come in here and go into the develop module. In the develop module, you have a lot of different sliders that are available to you at your discretion. Now, the first step that I always do when I'm coming into Lightroom is I'm making global adjustments first. Global adjustments are adjustments that impact the entire photo. So these are gonna be your basic sliders in Lightroom. Your basic sliders are on the right side. They're the very first ones you get to. And you can see I have a lot of detail in here with the shadows and with the highlights. So I'm going to try to increase that a little bit by playing up the contrast. Now, every photo is a little bit different. So these edits aren't going to be exactly what you make in all of your photos, but the process and the system that you follow, the step-by-step process, is going to help you with your photos. So what I'm gonna do next is kind of pull down on the highlights. It might be a little bit bright for me, but I'm gonna pull up on the whites. Now, if you hit the J key on your keyboard, you're gonna see some highlights come up on your screen. If I go all the way to white, it's gonna show up in red where those highlights are clipping in my photo, and I don't want that. I wanna take it right to the edge of clipping, so I bring out the most detail as possible in my sky. So it looks pretty bright right now, but I'm gonna show you a trick in just a little while on how to dial that in and get your sky dramatic and moody, and it's gonna blow you away. Next, with the blacks, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna pull them pretty far down, but then I'm gonna raise them back up to the point where I still have a little bit of detail, but I'm just hovering on that point of clipping those blacks in the photo. So clarity and texture here is really defined by the clarity adds a little bit more detail to the photo and a little bit more crisp edges. Texture adds more texture to the actual subjects. They act very similarly, but I want to caution you on using these. You don't have to use these a ton. Actually, to be honest, I rarely use a lot of these in global adjustments. I save those for future processes that we'll get to in just a second. So vibrance and saturation, in this photo, there's not a ton of color because it's really black and white, but there are some colors up on this hillside that I can bring out too. I can increase the vibrance just a little bit and the saturation too. Vibrance impacts the photo a lot more than saturation in a subtle way. Saturation can make your photo look overcooked. So I always go on the side of using vibrance first and then adjusting the final part with saturation to get it just right. Coming down here we have the tone curve, and the tone curve really isn't necessary if you're using the sliders. They're two of the exact same things. So it just depends on what kind of edits you like to make. I prefer and I teach using sliders, and the tone curve is just a little bit more difficult for me to use, to be honest. Color Mixer is up next, and to me, this is the most powerful tool in Lightroom that there is. Why? Because with the Color Mixer tool, we were looking at those greens just a second ago. I can click this dropper and hover right on this color and select out that exact color. Now in your photo, there are pixels that make up every single part of your photo, and every pixel represents three things: your hue, your saturation, and your luminance. So using that to your knowledge, you can come in here and say, okay, I want this a little bit more rich in color. I want it a little bit more brighter. If I want it more bright, I'm going to increase the luminance on that. If I want it to be more colorful, I'm going to increase the saturation. If I want it to be a little bit different of a color, I'm going to adjust the hue on that image or on that color swatch that we have here. So that's what I'm going to do with those greens. So I'm going to zoom out. We're back to the wide photo. And just in a couple edits, we've really impacted this photo a lot. So I'm going to scroll down here. Sharpening. One big trick about sharpening is that you have your Alt or Option key on your keyboard, and that unlocks the sharpening tool in Lightroom. A lot of people don't know this, but what you do is you hold down your Alt or Option key, and you can click and drag this up to see where exactly that sharpening is occurring. If I go all the way up, you see the radius impact the very edges of those objects. And then detail, I'm going to bring that up. It's really hard to see in this photo, but you also have this little window that you can hover around and find a hard edge to see where that detail is happening. Masking is my favorite part of sharpening because it tells sharpening exactly where to occur. Right now, the sharpening is occurring in the entire photo. You see it's white, but if I hold my Alt or Option key down and I pull up here, it's going to put that sharpening exactly on just the hard edges of my subjects out in the ocean, which is exactly where I want it because I don't want the waves sharp. I want them to stay misty and look really realistic in this image. So that's the trick to sharpening tools. Now, everything else in this photo, I'm just gonna leave as is, and we're gonna switch over to local adjustments now. But before we go right there, I wanna remind you, I teach all this plus way more, all the capabilities of Lightroom and Photoshop in Landscape Photography University. That course is on sale right now. It's linked in the video description for you to check out. If you wanna get that course for the sale price of $97, or you can get 15 courses for the same price of $97. That link is below in the video description for you to check out. Local adjustments are just places in the photo that I want to adjust. So this is going to be your masking tool right here. So the masking tool is this dotted circle. Massive, powerful tool. This is a great tool to use for your editing. So I'm going to come in here and I want to adjust my sky. So the AI selections in here are really good, not necessarily right now in the landscape option, but these add new mask features of subject, sky, and background are fantastic selections that you can make in your masks. So I'm going to select out my sky. It's going to analyze this photo and look how clean this mask is. We do get down here into the landscape just a little bit, but I think that's okay for this photo because it's just going to make a really subtle, easy adjustment down into the landscape from the sky. So I want this sky to be a little bit darker. Remember, we increased the highlights globally on this photo and the whites, but I want to darken that down and make this a lot more moody. With the sky selected, I'm going to drop my highlights and drop my whites pretty significantly and really impact the mood of that entire photo. Next, I'm going to increase the contrast to try to stretch out the contrast of that photo. And I'm going to see what darkening the blacks does, darkening the shadows does a little bit too. See how moody we made this photo. Just this information in the image was already there. We're just using the Lightroom tools to bring that out. We're not using a fake sky. This is the sky that was actually photographed there. Those highlights were just really bright and you couldn't see all the details. So that's the kind of thing that Lightroom local adjustments can do for you. If you're not using these, you're missing out a ton on great photo edits. Now, some of the things that can happen here in these images is they can leave a little bit of ghosting on the edges. So I'm going to dial this back just a little bit to try to reduce some of that ghosting in the photo. gonna come up to about right there. So that looks pretty good in this image. That's pretty much the only local adjustment that we have to make besides doing some dodging and burning. Now, dodging and burning is always the final step to any image that I create because it's a technique that's been used for hundreds of years in photography, and it allows you to separate out these tones even more just in a subtle way. So I'm gonna select a new mask and create a brush. I'm just gonna come in here and paint in some of these highlights in the clouds. So I'm just gonna come in here and paint where these bright parts of the clouds are, trying not to get into the landscape any, and that's what this mask looked like. So it doesn't have to be an exact mask. It can be really poorly drawn as I've done here. And you just increase those highlights just a little bit, increase the whites just a little bit, and also increase your contrast on those just a little bit more too. So there we have those adjustments. Now I'm gonna make an adjustment with the brush that's going to darken the other edges of these clouds. So I'm gonna create a new mask, come down to brush. I'm gonna use the same brush and I'm just gonna try to darken some of these clouds that are right around the highlight edges of the photo, kind of like that. That's what that mask looks like. Really, you know, it doesn't have to be perfectly drawn or anything like that. Increase the contrast on those, decrease the shadows a little bit, and decrease the blacks a little bit, and that looks pretty good. Lastly, I noticed that doing some of this masking, especially in the sky, brightened parts of the very top of the photo. So I'm gonna just create a new mask, a brush, and I'm gonna come in here and just paint the top, very top and corners of the sky, kind of like that. Deselect show overlay, and then I'm just going to drop the exposure a little bit, drop the contrast too, so those don't show up very much, and drop the shadows, the highlights just a little bit in that section of the photo. Maybe paint that in just a little bit more right there. So there's our finished photo that we have ready to print. If I go to the before and after, you can see a drastic improvement in this photo. Dramatic skies, we've really brought out a ton of detail in the photo. And this is how you go from meh photos all the way to great photos that are ready to hang on your wall. Again, that course is on sale right now for Landscape Photography University on how you can use Lightroom and Photoshop to create masterpieces in your photography and stop spending so much time editing and leaving amazing photos on your hard drive that are not even edited properly.